Hey friends, Tony here from TL Yarn Crafts with another fun and free crochet pattern. This time we're making the Omar Wrap, a crochet triangle scarf that's ready to be your canvas. It looks great in solid color yarn, with stripes, and with color changing cake yarn like you see here. Beginner friendly and a quick make, you'll be planning your second Omar Wrap before you finish the first. Now while watching this video, follow along with the full Omar Wrap pattern, which is available for free on my blog, TLYCblog.com. And you can also purchase a printable, ad-free PDF version from my website, tlyarncrafts.com. Links to both of these resources are in the description. Now, if you're excited to make the Omar Wrap with me today, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for even more free crochet patterns, product reviews, and tutorials. Now let's talk materials. To make the Omar Wrap, you'll need worsted weight yarn of your choice. I use Lion Brand's Mandala Ombre in the color Cool. This scarf takes 2 cakes. In addition to the yarn, you'll need a 6mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, and locking stitch markers. You'll also need blocking supplies, which we'll get to later. For this tutorial, I'm using a solid color yarn to make it a little easier to follow along. Now let's get stitching. We'll begin our work with a magic ring. The magic ring is just an adjustable loop that will work our first row of stitches into. You can do yours however you like to. Here's how I like to do mine. Lay the tail of the yarn in your hand. Yarn over twice over your finger. First loop over the second loop over the first and off your finger. Take the 2 tails, pull firmly, and now when you pull your tail, you have an adjustable loop. Flip your loop over. Insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. That does not count as your first chain. Here in our magic ring, we're going to start with a chain 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. The starting chain 4 counts as your first double crochet as well as a chain 1. Next, we're going to do a V-stitch inside our loop. So we're going to catch this strand right here. So for our V-stitch, we're going to double crochet, followed by a chain 1 and another double crochet into the ring. That's our V-stitch. We're going to follow that with a fan stitch. In this pattern, a fan stitch is as follows. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet. That's our fan stitch. We're going to follow that with a V-stitch. Remember, that's a double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet. After that, we're going to do a chain 1 and one last double crochet into our ring. From here, we can grab our tail and pull firmly to close. Before we move on, we want to mark the center double crochet of our fan. So remember, this was our chain 4, our V-stitch is here, and our fan is here. The center double crochet is right here. You can mark that however you want to, around the body of the stitch or in the top V. Now that that center stitch is marked, we can move on to row 2. Here in row 2, we'll begin with a chain 4 and turn our work. Now we want to V-stitch in the next chain 1 space, which is right here. Remember, this was our double crochet at the end of our row, and here's a chain space. We'll V-stitch here, which is a double crochet, followed by a chain 1 and a double crochet in the same space. And we'll V-stitch in each space to our marked stitch. Our next V-stitch goes here, and our next V-stitch goes in the space before our marked stitch. Here at the middle of the row, we're meant to V-stitch in the marked double crochet, which is this one. So we're going to go into the 2 loops at the top of this stitch with 1 double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet. At this point, we want to move our marker up to the chain space of the V-stitch we just made. So we're going to take our marker out of this stitch and move it up to this chain space. And now we're going to V-stitch in each chain 1 space to our turning chain. So our first chain space is right here after the double crochet that we just worked into. So we'll V-stitch here. We'll V-stitch in the next chain space, which is in the V-stitch right here. And we'll V-stitch in the space before our turning chain, because remember our turning chain is a double crochet in a chain 1. So we'll place a V-stitch into this space here. Our last steps in this row are to chain 1 and double crochet in the third chain of our turning chain. So if we give this a quick count, we have a double crochet here and 1, 2, 3 V-stitches. We have our marked V-stitch, and then 1, 2, 3 V-stitches, a chain 1, and our last double crochet. Now we can move on to row 3. To begin row 3, we'll start with a chain 4 and turn our work. We're going to V-stitch in the next chain 1 space until we get to our marked space. So our first V-stitch goes in this space right after the double crochet at the base of our chain. And we'll V-stitch in each chain space up to our marked space. So we'll place one here. We'll place one here. We'll place one here. And now we're up to our marked space. Here at our marked space, we need to place a fan. So to do our fan, we're going to double crochet into that space, chain 1, double crochet again into the same space, chain 1, and double crochet once more. So this is our fan. We're going to move our marker from the row below and mark the center double crochet of our fan. Now we're going to V-stitch in the next chain space until we get to our turning chain. So the next chain space is here. We'll place a V-stitch. We've got a space here, and we'll place a V-stitch. We've got a space here, and we'll place a V-stitch. And then we have our turning chain space. We'll place a V-stitch there as well. We'll finish up with a chain 1, double crochet in the third chain of our turning chain. There's 1, 2, and 3. Let's do a quick count. So we started with our chain 4, which counts as a double crochet in a chain 1. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 V-stitches, a fan stitch, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 V-stitches, a chain 1, and a double crochet here at the end. Now we can move on to row 4. We'll start with a chain 4, turn our work. We're going to skip this first chain space and V-stitch in the next chain space, which is right here. So skipping the first chain space, V-stitch in the next chain space. And we're going to continue V-stitching until we get to the marked double crochet. So V-stitch in the next chain space. And in the next chain space. And in the next chain space. And in the next chain space, which is part of our fan. Now we've made it to the marked double crochet. We're going to V-stitch into this stitch. Make sure you grab both loops at the top of that stitch. Place 1 double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet there. Then we're going to move the marker to the chain space of the last V-stitch we just completed. Now on this side, we're going to V-stitch in the next chain space. And we're going to repeat that until we get to the turning chain space. Here we're going to skip this turning chain space, chain 1, and then double crochet in the third chain of the turning chain. So we've got 1, 2, 3 chains, and we're going to place a double crochet right here. Let's do a quick count. So we started with a chain 4, which counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V-stitches. Then we have our marked V-stitch, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V-stitches on this side, followed by a chain 1 and a double crochet. From here, we're going to repeat our last 2 rows, row 3 and 4, until we have 14 total rows. And then we're going to follow that with another repeat of row 3. Join me back here when you're ready for row 16. Here I have my sample with 15 rows, and I know that because I actually use stitch markers to keep track. If that helps you, you can try it as well. One thing I'll mention before we continue is you can see that our bottom edge here is kind of lifting up, and if you experience that as well, it's completely normal, and we'll address that in the blocking step. But for now, let's continue on to row 16. We'll begin row 16 with a chain 4 and turn our work. Now we're going to skip this first chain space, and beginning right here, we're going to double crochet in each double crochet and chain space. So skipping our chain space, we're going to jump into this double crochet here, going under both loops, we'll double crochet. Now we'll go to the next chain space and place a double crochet. Now we'll go to the next double crochet and place a double crochet. And we'll do that across. So here we have a V-stitch, which is a double crochet, a chain, and a double, and each one of those is going to get a double crochet. There's the stitch, there's the space, there's the stitch. Next V-stitch, double in the stitch, double in the space, double in the stitch. And we'll repeat that until we get to the space before the marked stitch. So I've worked up towards the middle of my shawl here. I have a double crochet to put in this double crochet of the V-stitch. Here's my center fan. There's my center marked stitch. So I'm going to work a double crochet in this next double crochet. Now we're at the space before the marked stitch. Here I'm going to place 2 double crochet into this space. There's 1 and 2. In this next stitch, I'm going to place 3 double crochet here. Here's 1. Here's 2 and 3. Before I move on, I'm going to move my marker and put it in the second double crochet of the 3 double crochet I just did. So there's 1, 2, 3 double crochet. I'm going into the second right here. Moving on from here, I'm going to put 2 double crochet in the next chain 1 space right here after the stitch I just worked. There's 1 and 2. And now I'm going to get back into the pattern, placing 1 double crochet for each stitch and space across to the turning space. I'm getting towards the end of my row here. I'm going to place a double crochet in this double crochet. I'm going to skip the turning chain space, and then I'm going to chain 1 and double crochet in the third chain of the turning chain. There's 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm ready to move on to row 17. For row 17, we'll begin with a chain 4 and turn our work. Now we're going to V-stitch in this first chain space. There's a double crochet, a chain 1, and another double crochet into that space. Now we're going to skip the next double crochet here and V-stitch in the following double crochet. We're going to skip 2 double crochet, V-stitch in the next. Skip 2 double crochet, V-stitch in the next. Skip 2 double crochet, V-stitch in the next. And we're going to repeat this until we get up to our marked double crochet. So join me when you get there. Now that I'm getting up to the top, I have 2 stitches and then my marked stitch. Here in my marked stitch, I'm going to place a fan. So remember, that's double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet. As always, we're now going to move our marker to the center double crochet of that fan. From here, we want to skip 2 and get back into our pattern, placing a V-stitch in this next double crochet. Skip 2, V-stitch in the next stitch. Skip 2, V-stitch in the next stitch. And we'll repeat this until we get to the double crochet before our turning chain. Now we're at the double crochet before the turning chain space. We're going to skip this double crochet and in the turning chain space, place a V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet again. From here, we'll chain 1 and double crochet in the third chain of our turning chain. There's 1, 2, and 3. Here's how it goes from this point. Row 18 is a repeat of row 4. Rows 19 through 32 are a repeat of rows 5 through 18. That's 14 total rows. Rows 33 through 44 is a repeat of rows 5 through 16. That's 12 additional rows. Complete those and join me back here when you're ready for row 45. Before demoing row 45, I'm going to pull out this last row that I did and build off of my row 16. Don't get confused. I'll be at a different point in my shawl than you are, but row 45 is going to look the same on your shawl as it does on mine. So join me here when you're ready for row 45. Now we're ready to start row 45. We're going to begin with a chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and turn our work. We're going to double crochet first in our chain 1 space, right here. We're going to follow that with a front post double crochet around our next stitch. So yarn over, we're going to work around our stitch, going from the back to the front and around, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That is our front post double crochet. Then we're going to back post double crochet 2. So find your next stitch. This time you're going to go from back to front to back around that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and complete the double crochet. So there was 1, and then we'll back post double crochet around the next stitch. We're going to go from back to back around that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and through 2 again. Front post double crochet around each of the next 2 stitches, from front to back to front around the stitch, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over through 2, and through 2 again, front post double crochet the next stitch. And we're going to repeat this until we get to the marked double crochet. So 2 back post double crochets, there's 1 and 2, then 2 front post double crochets, there's 1 and 2, 2 back post, there's 1 and 2, 2 front post, there's 1 and 2. Meet me back here when you get to your marked stitch. Now I've made it up to my marked stitch. First I'm going to chain 1 and then back post double crochet the marked stitch. So I'm just going to drop this marker first, back post double crochet around this stitch, and then I want to mark the stitch I just completed. From here, I'm going to chain 1, and then front post double crochet the next 2 stitches. And back post double crochet the following 2 stitches. I'm going to continue working in this 2 front post, 2 back post pattern until I get to the stitch before my chain 1 space. Join me when you get there. Here I'm at the stitch before the space of my turning chain. I'm going to front post double crochet 1, and then double crochet into the chain space, chain 1, and double crochet in the 3rd chain of my turning chain. So here's 1, 2, and 3. And 3. There we go. Okay. And now we can move on to row 46. Row 46 begins with a chain 4. And then we'll turn our work. From here, we're going to double crochet into the chain 1 space. And then we're going to back post double crochet each of the next 2 stitches. So the next stitch is just a regular double crochet. We're going to back post double crochet around it. And we're going to do that for the next stitch as well, going around the post of that stitch. Front post double crochet each of the next 2 stitches. Here's 1 and 2. Then back post double crochet each of the next 2 stitches. Here's 1 and 2. Front post double crochet 2. Back post double crochet 2. Front post, there's 1 and 2. Whoop. Back post, 1 and 2. We'll continue in this pattern until we get to 2 stitches before our marked stitch. So this is our marked stitch. We'll stop when we get to these 2 back post stitches right here. Join me when you get there. We've made it to the 2 stitches before our marked stitch. Now we're going to back post double crochet 2. Here's 1 and 2. We're going to double crochet into this chain 1 space. Follow that with a chain 1. We're going to drop our marker for the last time. Place a front post double crochet around this center stitch. Follow that with a chain 1. Double crochet into the chain space. And now we can jump back into our ribbing stitch pattern with 2 back post double crochets. There's 1 and 2. And 2 front post double crochets. There's 1 and 2. Continue in that pattern until you get to 2 stitches before the turning chain space. And I'll see you there. Now we're at 2 stitches before our turning chain space. We're going to back post double crochet 2. There's 1 and here's 2. We're going to follow that with a double crochet into the chain space, a chain 1, and then double crochet in the 3rd chain of the turning chain. We're done with our stitching and now we can do our finishing. Our first finishing step is to fasten off, which basically means cutting our yarn to detach the project from the ball of yarn. We're just going to grab our scissors, leaving a fairly nice tail. We're going to snip and then pull this loop up and out of our work. From here we need to weave in our ends. I'm going to tighten in so you can see how I do this for this shawl. For this end, which is coming off the corner, I'm going to thread it onto a tapestry needle and work it into my project. Essentially what I want to do when weaving in these ends is follow the shape of these stitches. So I'm going to go down a couple loops in this double crochet here, and then I'm going to start working across under the loops of my stitches. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. Just weave it in until you feel like the end is secure. So I'm going to go in one direction and pull the yarn through. And then I'm going to go back in the same direction. So this is the last loop that I pulled through when I was coming this way. Now going back this way, I'm going to skip this loop and work, for the most part, under the same loops that I went under already. Just like this. That'll make your end secure and it won't work its way out of your project. Now with your scissors, get close but not too close to your project and fasten off that last piece of yarn. The other end that we have in our project is here at our magic ring. Sewing in this end correctly is imperative because if this ring comes out, it could potentially loosen up all of the stitches here at the base of our project. So I'm going to thread this onto my tapestry needle. And the first thing I'm going to do is tighten this until that hole from the magic loop is completely gone. And then I'm going to make a knot. I'm essentially going to go under a couple of stitches here, bring this yarn around, and pull through. That way I have a knot that I'm pretty comfortable is going to stay secure and not work its way out. But just to make myself even more comfortable, I'm going to now weave in this end as securely as possible. I'm going to work my way under a few stitches here at the base of my project, and then I'm actually going to go up as well. So I'm getting under a few loops. Again, there's no science to it, just whatever makes you feel good. I'm going to go up this direction. I think I'm going to go this way. Let's hang a left at this stitch and go up and go back right. Yeah, I feel good now. That feels good to me. Again, there's no right or wrong way to weave in your ends, just whatever makes you feel secure that your yarn is not going to work its way out of its project. And then snip that last end off. From here, we're going to block our shawl. At this point, your shawl is going to be much larger than mine, but you're still going to get these weird lines along the bottom. The goal for blocking is not only going to be to increase drape and make the body of our shawl nice and soft, but also to make this line as straight as possible. To block my project, I'm going to start by laying out a few blocking mats. Next, I'm going to preheat my steamer. And while that's warming up, I'm gonna lay out and pin my shawl. So since getting this edge straight is the most important piece to me, I'm gonna start there. I'm gonna start pinning with my knit blockers and follow up with T-pins if I need to. Now that my bottom edge is pinned, I can massage the fabric flat so I get the true shape of my shawl. I'm going to flip this around and start pinning the bottom. For the garment steamer that I have, I know it's preheated once this light is solid, so we're good to go. I'm going to allow the steam to come out and start steaming my project. You'll want to continue steaming until your project is damp but not soaked. Mine is nice and warm and damp. I'm going to lay it in front of a fan to let it air dry completely. Once it's completely done air drying, I'll take my pins out and see how my shape looks. My shawl is now completely dry to the touch and I'm ready to unpin it. I'm going to remove my knit blockers now. And just like that, my shawl is complete. We can see already that we have a beautiful triangular shape. I have achieved that straight line across the top of my shawl, and it feels amazing. It's very flowy and lightweight, and when I wrap that around my neck, it's gonna be just perfect. Thanks so much for joining me to make the Omar Wrap. I really hope you love this project as much as I do. Now, before we go, let's give some love to our Cup of Caffeine sponsor, and today that's Lolo, who signed up for a recurring monthly donation. Lolo left the sweetest note, and it said, "Hey Tony, I love how informative your videos and content are. All the patterns you have available and your sparkling personality is a cherry on top. Keep doing what you're doing." I surely will, Lolo, and thank you so much. Now, if you like my videos and want to support my channel, buy me a coffee. Who knows, I might shout you out in one of my videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.